The problem is you have this paradoxical situation where America has the strongest military in the world by some margin. I mean, America, the United States Air Force still has something like 14,000 aircraft. So if you're looking on the graph, it's kind of like that with kind of China there and then America kind of there. It's so out of all proportion to everybody else. And, thank goodness. But you have whatever hold Putin has over the current president, who knows? But it's definitely something, because otherwise his response to what's going on makes no sense whatsoever. And you have Western Europe saying all the right things. Oh, we stand together side by side with our brothers in Ukraine, and absolutely. And actually Europe has been guilty of doing the worst of all, which is promising the Ukrainians a lot, but not actually delivering. And there is no excuse for it at all. And if there's one thing where I would completely wholeheartedly agree with Trump, it is about time that Europe stepped up. Now, there were historic reasons why America played the dominant party in NATO. And actually, that was encouraged by President Eisenhower in the 1950s. He wanted it that way. He didn't want Germany to have a large military for very obvious reasons. But those days are gone. We're now 80 years on, and it's time for Europe to step up. And this excuse that we can't afford it, that we're broke, is just not good enough, because we can. It's not about whether we can afford it. It's about whether we want to do it. The problem is we are in democracies, and our people, our populations, are selfish, and this goes back to the original point, are complacent and entitled, and do not want to pay for it. And no elected politician is going to go through with something that the vast majority of the voting public don't want to do. Now, from a British point of view, Keir Starmer is not going to win the next election. So I would be very happy for him to come out and go, do you know what, I'm not even going to contest the next election. But what I am going to do is I'm going to try and do good between now and the next 3.5, 4 years until the next election, and I'm going to focus on that. And I am going to sell the idea of the coalition of the willing, or whatever he calls it. And I am going to try and pull people together, and I'm going to show some leadership, and I'm going to show some vision, I'm going to show some mettle, and I'm going to disregard the kind of disparate parts of my Labour Party. I'm going to actually just really go for it. And he would absolutely, if he did that, oh my God, he probably would win another election, because, but he doesn't have that vision. He doesn't have that imagination. He doesn't have that charisma and that drive to lead people forward. And, nor does Merz, by the sound of things. Macron is in a complete mess with his own policies, because French people don't want to work beyond 62. I mean, it's absolutely astonishing to me. In Britain, your retirement age is 67. In France, you sort of go, you've got to retire at 64. They start burning rubber tires, and the whole country comes to a standstill. It's just absolutely bizarre. And again, I would throw the same accusations that I've been throwing at Britain, and to a certain extent to the US, to France and to Germany. Come on, guys, pull your finger out. It's time. This is a big global threat. Together, we can do this. It is absolutely appalling that the Ukrainians should be expected to give up 1 inch of the Donbass. It was violated by an aggressive nation who had no right to be there. And there is no right of any other nation to tell them what they should and should not be doing. Now, it is absolutely, completely fair enough for the United States to go, do you know what? This is not our fight. We don't want to get involved. Fine. Okay, that's fine. But you can't tell Zelensky what he should and shouldn't do. And from a European point of view, if you're going to support Zelensky, bloody well support him. Don't just, words cost nothing. Action is what counts. And yes, we are giving them lots of money, and we're releasing billions and stuff. But Brexit. Don't get me started. But how much easier it would be. So this is how I think it should happen. I think you should create a defense, security, and resilience bank, which would be like the IMF or the World Bank or whatever, where people, you use government bonds to raise money. You have a massive, great pot. You get everyone working. You reinvigorate the nation's economies by you boost economic growth by issuing huge defense contracts, whether it be Britain, France, Germany, Holland, Belgium, whoever. And what you do is you do this in collaboration, in the same way that the British and Americans were doing this in the World War II. So Britain was building 6-pounder guns, which the Americans called a 3-inch, and was used by the Americans. Americans were building Sherman tanks, which the British then used. So we didn't do so much on tanks, but the Americans were doing that bit. We provided Americans with all sorts of other stuff, like 31% of all supplies in the ETO, the European Theatre of Operations, was supplied by Britain for America, for example. So Lenny's actually cut both ways. So you're pulling together and you're pooling resources. So you might have a situation where Krupp, for example, in Germany, is building tanks, but or some field gun or some other kind of new weapon system, whatever it might be. But some of the parts are being built by a cottage industry in the Cotswolds in the west of England, for example. And you've got this flow of different, the main event is in Britain and it's being supported by companies in France and throughout Europe, or the main event is in France and it's being supported by little satellite companies all around that. That is how you pull together. And everyone will be richer on the back of this, by the way. This is a really, really good idea. And it kills lots of birds with one stone, because it means, Putin is not going to invade the Baltic states if he thinks he's not going to win. He's not going to invade Moldova if he doesn't think he's going to win. He's going to back off, probably, in Ukraine if he doesn't think he's going to win. But while he thinks the West is weak and divided, he's going to exploit that, because that's what bullies always do. And that's what autocrats always do. So you've got to show togetherness. And it is not the responsibility of the United States to be the peacekeepers of the world. America, whether it likes it or not, is still the most powerful nation in the world, and it has responsibility. There are international responsibilities that come with that, whether they like it or not. And they should absolutely respond to that, because that is the privilege of the position. That is the cost of that privilege of having reached top nation status. But Europe is really wealthy. Europe is the third largest economic bloc in the world. It has 780 million people, which is larger than any other bloc apart from China, obviously, but it's obviously larger than the United States, larger than Russia by some margin. It has lots of great minds, it has lots of money, it has lots of brilliant people. Together, it can absolutely kick Putin's backside and kick him into the long grass. But where is the will? Where is the vision? Where is the drive? Where are the Churchillian speeches? Where are the Rooseveltian speeches? Where are, frankly, the Trumanesque speeches? Completely absent. And that's the problem at the moment. It needs someone to step up and actually show a bit of vision and take people with them. And it's perfectly possible to do. And it's called charisma and vision and leadership. And it's completely absent at the moment.
I'd like to
get off my soapbox. You got me started there.